Call this city council meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, well, welcome everyone to our meeting tonight. Thank you for attending. Per my standard practice, we'll do a review of tonight's agenda. I will call for any proposed changes to tonight's agenda. I will then get into public comment. Jeff, has there been any public comment online or in person submitted?
No, Mayor.
All right. I don't believe we have any public comment to respond to, do we?
I don't believe so.
All right, good. Under our consent agenda, we will have our city council meeting minutes for our December 2nd meeting, our Parks and Trail Advisory Board appointments, as well as the contract approval for the pump and pump cans for Bull Run Supply Pump Station. We also have the contract approval for Veolia for the 5-year extension, operations, maintenance, and management services for the drinking water and wastewater treatment process. Under presentations, we have our presentation for our Sandy Net Master Plan. Under new business tonight, and never light, huh? Review of the interpretive signs for Bell Street, 362nd Avenue. Have the IGA approval for the on-call construction for Sandy Net, CBX Colorado and Gunderson Road Fiber Project, and the contract approval for the City of Sandy door access system. And then with that, we will round off the evening with a report from our city manager and our committee and council reports. Jeff, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Councilor Mayton.
Present.
Councilor Smallwood.
Here.
Councilor Sheldon.
Here.
Councilor Walker.
Here.
Councilor Hamlin.
Here.
Councilor Hopkinson.
Here.
Mayor Pullen.
Here. Thank you for that, Jeff. With that, we'll move ahead to our consent agenda.
Changes?
Sure.
I'd like to propose that we, since we didn't have any public comment, that we spend just a minute and talk about some of the comments that showed up online about chlorine in the water. AJ's ready to talk about that. If we can just talk about that for a minute.
Sure.
Thanks, AJ.
So, would you like to ask a question or just?
Well, yeah, on behalf of several anonymous posters and less anonymous than others, some, there've been some issues about chlorine in the water. They're smelling chlorine, assertions that damaging clothes and so forth. What can you tell us about that? And also, if somebody's experiencing that problem or thinks they are, what should they do?
So as far as experiencing the problem, what they should do, really the only thing that we can do on a household level is carbon filtration. So like a Brita filter or Brita tap filter would do the trick there. The chlorine in the water, we manage as best we can. The water coming from our sources, Sandy sources, we have control over that chlorine. The issue that we have is the water that we pull from Bull Run currently is off their raw water supply. And they have to get enough chlorine into it to get it all the way down through their system. So it comes in a little hot is a term that we use for that pretty regularly. And that's the reason that we bring water in from there, mix it with the water from our system to bring that chlorine down as much as possible. And then as part of the projects that we have going forward here, we will have control over the chlorine level in our water from the Portland supply as well, which will eliminate this issue.
So is it possible people are actually experiencing higher than desired chlorine levels?
Not out of regulation levels, but there is
And
some
those-
instances where there is more of a chlorine smell, yes. And as far as damaging clothing, I really can't speak to that, so. Any
Thank
other
you.
question?
Thanks.
appreciate it.
If, is there a contact, like if somebody thinks that's a problem, obviously Facebook is probably not the best place to
Of
go.
course not.
What should we have them do?
We have our Sandy Net, My Sandy app that we have available, which will ping our team and they will be able to respond to that in due time. If it's an immediate issue, there's always the call-in number that's available 24/7.
Okay.
Which I don't know off the top of my head, so I apologize for that.
But they can easily find it on our website.
Yes, they can.
They're going to the public works section of the website.
Yes, thank you, Jess.
Thank you. Thanks for the response.
Of course.
Thanks, AJ. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, of course. Thanks, AJ. Unless there's anything else or discussion, we can entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion, we adopt the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's a Motion by Counselor Sheldon and a second by Counselor Mayton to adopt the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nays. Motion carries. Moving ahead to presentations, Sandy Net Master Plan presentation. Greg, welcome.
Let me give an intro.
Want to kick us off, Tyler?
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Would it be okay to invite the Sandy Net board, those who are here? to
Sure,
the-
there are members staying at board that like to pull up a seat or participate. Or sit
Pull up
there,
as many
whatever.
chairs as you'd like.
Sure.
So Mayor, one of the council goals for the current biennium was to complete a long-term sustainable utility plan for Sandy Net, or condense that name down to a Sandy Net master plan. So Greg and the Sandy Net department have been working with RISI to develop that master plan. There was several outreach opportunities with key stakeholders, Sandy Net Advisory Board, city council members, staff. And so what we have before you this evening is the draft Sandy Net master plan. The Sandy Net Advisory Board has reviewed this at their last board meeting. I think endorsed is the appropriate word to use, endorse the plan from their perspective. And so tonight we are presenting to the council, answer any questions that you all have. We'll take that feedback and answer any questions, incorporate that into the plan, and then bring it back for adoption early in 2025. Craig, I'll go ahead and kick it off.
Yeah,
To you.
good evening, council. It's been a while since I've been up here, but thank you for giving me the opportunity tonight to bring forth this plan for discussion. I do want to go over a couple of things on the staff report before we jump right into the presentation. Alex is from RISI is online here and will be presenting and going over the master plan in more detail. I figured at that time it didn't be appropriate to open up, have a discussion, and I'm here, Sandy Net Advisory Board's here to answer questions along with Alex as well. So those of you that might remember back far enough, in 2009, I believe we had our first master plan adopted. That has been the active plan up until, well, still currently. And 2009 is when I started working here the first time in high school. So it's a bit out of date. Since then, we have deployed wireless throughout the entire city. We have deployed fiber optic throughout the rest of the city. We've connected businesses, homes, and we've even expanded with a public-public partnership with Clackamas County to serve underserved areas. And so by now, the 2009 telecommunications master plan is well out of date. It's obsolete. Anything that was relevant has been executed and everything else is no longer relevant. And so at the direction of council, underneath the most recent council goals, staff went out and solicited a consultant to put together the Sandy Net master plan. RISI won the award, or RISI, we call them RISI though, had put together a wonderful master plan that was gone through before our Sandy Net Advisory Board and been endorsed, interviewed key stakeholders. And I, myself and staff and the advisory board have been very pleased with the results as well. And so before I turn it over to Alex, I do have a couple of considerations that I just want to get out of the way here, since it'll just work better to talk about them here now. Underneath section 3.2, there is discussion about a second and redundant data center being incorporated. Staff believes that there is cost savings that could be combined by adding that with the facility as we look for a new home as well. And so we want that to be known that that's going to be an active consideration. Underneath sections 4 and 5, I just want to make note that these are recommendations that are mentioned in the document, but not required to be executed immediately. So there's the obligation is up to the council to pick and choose what the goals are, requirements, and the extent of them here. A lot of these are at direction based on information that was provided during the interviews, as well as data from the financials and kind of asset inventory that we did. However, you know, by no means is this written into stone saying that things have to be executed a certain way. In a lot of cases, staff would come back to council for direction or do additional research itself to see if there's any tweaks or minor modifications that need to happen. And then finally, underneath section 7, we discuss regulatory requirements. This is kind of an evolving landscape that's been changing rapidly over previous years, and it's kind of hard to predict the future and where things are going to go. So we talk about what we know for sure currently, but we don't talk about things about on whether or not the current level of compliance necessarily. Staff is aware of some things that do need to be modified, but we omitted anything that was kind of non-compliant, so that's not written into stone as we do get in compliance on those remaining items. And with that, I'll introduce Alex and we'll get on with the presentation.
Excellent. Thanks, Greg. Can you hear me and see this presentation all right?
We can.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much. So it's great to be here. My name is Alex Kelly. I lead the broadband consulting team at Innovation Strategies, Inc. We're a nonprofit consultant that works with small towns and rural areas on broadband planning as well as economic development. So I will just go through this quick deck, try to keep it to 10 minutes, and then happy to answer questions in collaboration with Greg and the team. So this is an executive summary of sorts, just the main things. If you take anything away from this presentation, it's what's on this slide. SandyNet is an incredible asset to the Sandy community and a really unique ISP in terms of what it has achieved and the vision over the last decade plus, as well as the penetration rates, the number of customers it has, and the prices it offers. I really can't understate what an asset SandyNet is to the community. And reaching 4,000 subscribers is a great milestone, as well as the level of deployment through the city that they've achieved. And what we really did in this plan and the findings center around a couple changes and evolutions that we really think that SandyNet should consider to make sure that the asset it has been for the past 10 years can remain for the next 20 years at the current level of service and excellence that it has. So, from a financial perspective, the finances are stable is the word I think we're using, but there are some investments we think that need to be made to ensure long-term operational sustainability, as well as make sure the infrastructure stays up to date and cutting edge, and make sure that the staff can continue to provide the excellent level of service they've been providing. So I'm going to go into the specifics now. So first on the physical plant, that's the actual fiber and the electronics that run the network. The physical plant is doing great. Our primary finding, though, is that we're recommending that SandyNet better account for the depreciation of the assets that they have, which happen like any other asset, right? Over time, things need to be replaced. And I know that previous asset replacement funding that SandyNet had set aside ended up being allocated to other operational priorities. Well, we're recommending that it's time to stop doing that and to make sure that that SandyNet has a depreciation reserve fund based on the industry best practices of assuming that electronics last for 7 years and fiber lasts for about 30 years. In the infrastructure side of things as well, and this is what Greg just alluded to in his preamble, resiliency and redundancy best practices do suggest that SandyNet would benefit from another central office, the guts of the network that's in the building that you're in there, right? Most ISPs, as they reach a certain size and maturity, will have a second one for resiliency purposes. Obviously, you've been fine up until this point without that, but it's a sign of maturity and a best practice for networks to do that. So recommendations, as I previewed on the network asset and physical plant side, formally account for the network depreciation in a more rigorous way, and budget for a telecom data center upgrade. And we think that to do that appropriately, that means setting aside about $550,000 a year. And we'll get into how to pay for that in some of the other recommendations.
Question, does the $550,000 include the second site?
Yes, it does. Although, the exact cost of the second site, you'll have to, it depends on when you execute it, what building it goes in, it has to go out to bid. And so, we have, estimates for what that'll cost, but you know, you won't know until you get the final bids and decide where to put it and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Can I clarify that?
Sure.
That 550,000 is a depreciation for the second data center, not the acquisition of the second data center, is that correct?
No, 550,000 is depreciation for the network itself, so the fiber and the electronics. And, you know, a data center itself will probably be about a one-time cost of about 500,000 as well. And so you know, that's kind of the rough numbers there.
And maybe if I could also ask a question here, is my understanding that doesn't include the structure either? Is that correct?
The building,
Right.
yes, right, yeah. Great. So on the staffing front, we've been very impressed with what the SandyNet staff has been able to do. They work incredibly hard, and you know, when we work with a lot of different ISPs, and a lot of ISPs of a similar size, and SandyNet has fewer employees than pretty much every other ISP that we're intimately aware of that's at a comparable level. So achieving quite a bit with fewer employees than is typical. There is a risk of burnout and being overworked, as everyone knows in the current environment. So we do think that growing the staff, you know, incrementally is going to be important, and we have a few recommendations on that front. And also, you know, it is very challenging to hire talented telecom staff at the moment, and especially needing to replace people on short notice is not easy to do. There's just been so much funding flooding into the industry that the demand for those roles has gone up quite a bit. So we do really recommend growing the staff by a couple employees to ease everyone's workload and make things a little bit more resilient. You know, there's quite a number of recommendations in the plan under this category. Obviously, they don't need to be taken all at once. In fact, it'd be very difficult to do them all at once, but there are some things like making sure that the staff that works during the days doesn't need to also handle customer service at night, which I know Greg is working on, hiring after hours customer service function. That should be about $55,000 to $60,000 a year. Which is not that bad when you think of the stress and sleep it saves for the staff. We think, you know, running an ISP is a full-time job, and we do recommend separating the SandyNet general manager role from the city IT role to make sure both can be done, you know, with complete focus from individual people.
I can jump in real quick on that one. That one to me really feels like we grew too fast and we didn't address the position. You know, like in the early days of SandyNet, yeah, we'll take our IT guy or gal and we'll, you know, move over to SandyNet. It all sounds like the internet, you know, so like that's what that's what we're going to do. But I mean, the reality is those are two very, very different functioning roles, with very different responsibilities and teamwork.
And competing goals.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it just
right.
feels like it's at a point where maybe we don't have the money to fund it, but it's definitely at a point where it should be.
Right, I mean, that's the point of the recommendation.
Yeah.
It's like you said, maybe not today,
Yeah.
but this is where we gotta go.
And Stan, to comment on that, SandyNet, as I know Don knows, started with a city manager that had an idea, who was also the IT support person for everyone here, fixing all that, also climbing on the roofs to put on wireless equipment. So that's how basically we outgrew that model. So we're a true grassroots organization that just has grown past the grassroots.
Yeah. I don't know if we would ask any other department head, but we have in the past in parks and everything, but we really do need to stop asking our department heads who wear so many hats.
We were a much smaller city at the time, so we were.
So, and then some of the other recommendations on the staffing front, I mean, we go through the types of roles we would add to beef up the Sandy Net staff, and then talk a little bit about marketing as well as establishing talent pipelines to ease recruitment and make sure there's it's easier to grow the staff and replace people if they move on. So this is this is a little bit of a tricky one. I mean, Sandy Net charges the lowest rates that I've ever seen at an ISP that I've done any work for, and some of the lowest rates in the nation, which is obviously a great thing. I think what we noticed through working with Greg and the team is that has come at a cost that is going to catch up with Sandy Net at some point if changes aren't made, and that's both in the the missing 4 to 5 roles compared to comparable ISPs, not even counting the fact that the general manager also is the IT manager, right? That has resulted in the need to delay saving for depreciation and things like that. So the low rates are really admirable, but the implications of keeping the rates that low are catching up to Sandy Net. And so we do think that rate adjustments will be required to make sure that Sandy Net can maintain the level of service it's been providing into the future. And what we did for Greg to help with this is we created a pricing analysis tool, because there's different ways that you can that you can change the rates, right? There's different tiers, there's business rates. And so we created a tool to allow Greg to kind of analyze the how to do that and the ways to do that. And if I move to the recommendation slide here, I think one of the clear recommendations is right now business customers that are not on the don't have an SLA, a service level agreement, basically a higher level of agreement and service, right? Those business customers pay the same rates as residential customers. That's very non-standard across the country. So that's an easy place where you can alter the rates for those customers. But overall, I think we are recommending you target a $12 increase in the average revenue per user to account for the staff increases that are needed and the asset depreciation. Now, this does not mean that every customer at every level goes up $12. That could be one way to do it, but the point of the pricing tool we made is to allow Greg and the team to look at different ways to achieve the overall increase that is needed while trying to minimize the burden on rate increases for the entry level tier, for example. And the other, the other recommendation in the pricing section of the plan, which you'll see is, there were about 50 households in Sandy that were subscribed to the federal broadband subsidy that was started during the pandemic. That subsidy has ended, and in the vein of trying to make Sandy an affordable place for people who are in the low income category, we offered some thoughts on how you could replace the federal subsidy with a subsidy that is provided to those same families or that category of families out of the revenues from Sandy Net. I'm sure there's probably some questions on this slide, so I'll pause for a second to see if anyone has any thoughts.
Our rates, do they go up with CPI? Have these been adjusted with like our annual increases? So these have stayed flat for how long?
The last rate increase for Sandy Net was 3 years ago.
No. More recently. As I say, I remember doing one, but I don't remember. That goes more like a COLA or something. Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, I mean,
It's been based on cost and budgets.
Yeah, because
Up
we
to
did the
now.
price
It hasn't-
differential right between the two bands, right?
It's not being driven by these things that we have now, because that's why I think it's interesting what you said, account for the medium and long term. We've been accounting for the short term in the rates that we're charging today. We're just not accounting for anything beyond them.
So when we started with the Sandy Fiber, it was $39.95 and we've raised it one time or twice,
Technically,
Twice. Like $2 and
Yeah.
it's to $44.95 now. And it's been 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah, I think it was $2 in 2019, and then we went up $3 to $44.95 in 2021. I believe that's the most recent.
And what's the marketplace look like?
Alex, do you have a slide that
Because to me,
shows?
that's like a big difference, right? It's
the
not like,
comparisons?
when you're paying, there's two ways to look at it, and I see bits and pieces why people look at it both ways, but some would make the argument that it's a utility, it's like any other utility, right? You go on and pay. But I can't think of any other utility like that has the marketplace, at play like a broadband internet does, and we're drastically under the rest of the marketplace.
So when we
With-
start,
Sorry, with a superior product, vastly superior.
yeah, when we started SandyNet 20 years ago, you had to convince people to get the internet still, right? Like, it's like, why do I need this, right? Others said, I need this for work or just life. And as we grew and then we went to fiber, it's like, well, why do I need to switch off of your wireless? Because that would do fine for me. I just check my email. Streaming of Netflix still came on DVDs in the mail. And we've seen one of those in a while. So as that changed and we went to fiber, we were still trying to convince people because we needed to hit a threshold of how many people we had signed up to make the build work, right? And so we did that. And now, we're one of the successes for that, right? But that stage was yesterday type thing, and now we're in the new where we are today. So
Yeah.
perfect time to relook at this. So.
Yeah, and I apologize. I don't have a slide that compares SandyNet prices to competitors in the community. That information is in the plan, but I would say that so one of the ways that you can achieve this $12 increase in average revenue per user, involves raising the $44.95 tier up by $8. That's, I think, the minimum we think you can raise that tier and still achieve $12 increase overall. And at that rate, or even raising the lowest tier $12, right, that gets you to 57. That's still far more affordable than any of the other competitors, if you can even call them that, because SandyNet has a superior product. So from a competition standpoint, you're really not risking losing customers to a cheaper option, because there still won't be a cheaper option, and it certainly won't be a better option.
Page 266, you list some in PDF, you list the competitors and their costs. One of my concerns to Standpoint, which is going to be the second part of my question or statement, is we kind of have made these utilities by looping them in with our utility bills. So I think there's going to be if this is a discussion we're going to have about raising costs, I think we also need to have a discussion about separating the two. So that's just my thoughts. Yeah.
I've got two questions. One is my ignorance. ARPU, can you describe what that means? Because average revenue per user, does that mean like a household or is
It's
that?
a marketing term for taking, total customer base, how much you collect, and it boils down to how much revenue do you get per subscriber.
Average revenue per user.
After our
I had to
costs.
Google it.
But it
No,
says
that's-
that
No, I
right
know,
there.
I know what that
But it
is.
says
I know what the
that.
acronym is.
It's
But I don't know
per
what it
bill.
means.
Oh, right.
Right. So if I have 10 people in my
But it's
house,
per
I'm one.
subscriber. Okay, so that helps.
Yeah, most likely home.
And then the $12 increase that's proposed here, does that pay for the medium and the long-term vision, including the staffing? That
Yes.
ended, or is that why that benchmark is there?
Yeah, that's why.
Yep. So yeah, the per user in this case is typically a household. If the lowest tier right now is, let's say, $45, but there's a $55 and $65 tier. So if you average all of the households that are subscribers across everything that gets paid each month for subscriptions, that gets you your average revenue per user, which in SandyNet's case, Greg, you may have this number off the top of your head, but it's something along the lines of $54, $55 per month when you average everyone together. And we're suggesting that needs to increase by $12 overall in order to pay for all of the recommendations that we think are critical for the long-term health of SandyNet.
Does that not include the separate pricing for non-SLA business customers?
So that's a tool that you can use to increase the ARPU. And so the $12 increase in ARPU and average revenue per user should include an increase for the business customers. But a simple way to think about it is if you increase the business customer pricing by $100, which is too much, but if you increase that by $100, you might only need to increase the residential pricing by $6, right? Whereas if you increase the business pricing by $20, you'd have to increase the residential pricing by $8 or $9, right? So it's one of the levers you can pull is changing the prices for specific subsets of subscribers, including business customers and customers who are subscribing to the fastest speeds, for example.
Well, thank you. I ask only because we're struggling as a city to budget for police officers. So I want to know how we're going to pay for these much needed, asks. And I agree, and we need to grow that segment of our city in Sandy, and just want to make sure we have the money to cover it. So that helps explain it to
Yep.
me.
And it was driven a lot by the equipment replacement and the depreciation schedule to create how much we need to set aside, which then showed the future path for that plus growth. So that model that is not in here that Rizzy already gave to me is one that we can play with there, but that's kind of the goal of how it gets forecasted is through that process.
And what he was suggesting was that if we do a little work on the business side pricing, we might be able to save a little money on the residential side.
Yeah.
of
And
pricing.
we can even in residential, there's different price points that we can set and target, so you can protect that bottom entry level.
Right.
So you can try to keep that as affordable as possible, while making those who want to stream 2 movies or 3 at the same time pay a little more, like me.
Especially for like our lower income users, right?
Yeah.
Because one of the things that we talked about during the shutdown was how valuable Sandy Net was for, especially for kids who are going to school online for such a long period of time.
And even
so-
our lowest quality of service. is
Absolutely.
Really good.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. You're all talking about this in exactly the right terms. Greg has the tool to look at all the complicated ways in which the overall revenue changes if you change different tiers. But again, I think $12 overall, and we do think that it will be very hard to hit the $12 overall increase without raising the lowest tier at least by $8. So take that for what it's worth.
Our ARPU is $50 and the recommendation is we need to get up to $62. And so it's $50 because our current numbers are about 71% are on the 500 megabit plan and 29% on gigabit. So that increases that automatically just as your overall average. But we also that doesn't include these things like the multi-gigabit service. There's phone, there's other mesh units, some of these other services that add and increase that slightly as well. So that's how you get to that overall number there. So it's not, the ARPU is not the lowest plan that's currently in place.
So I have a question. You all are currently in a building that may or may not continue to be there. And so when you talked about this data center, and then you said something about it costs 500,000. I'm trying to understand what, I pictured that, y'all having a new building to, like in the Public Works, whatever the world headquarters thing, what do you guys call it? The Operations Center, excuse me. Sorry, Mike used to call it that. But I envisioned you having, kind of building there which would contain your staff and all your supplies and everything like that. And I would be amazed if that costs $500,000. And so I just want to make sure that the cost of getting you guys a home that will fit the staff that you need is incorporated into these needed costs and needed rates that it's gonna take to do that. And plus all your machines are, when you say equipment, is all those boring machines and things that.
The goal would bring everything. And that's what we've been looking at as a site currently. It's not obviously set in stone or anything. The 500,000 is if we wanted to allocate land for a data center dedicated to that. That's kind of what we'd be looking at. I
When you
think-
say data center, I just picture like all the wires and everything.
Yeah, like what's currently here at City Hall that runs all those systems.
Right,
So
but
having,
it's not like all the office space and all that.
no,
Okay,
no,
so that's where
yeah.
we got to get that in there too.
But combining, I'm hoping we can get cost savings by combining it into one building as just a separate section of that
Right.
building.
Yeah. But I'm just skeptical of that 500,000 covering. We
No,
need
I
to
get
kind
it.
of cover the cost for the office space
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, well, if I might also recommend, I mean, the timing of those costs will, and covering those costs will really depend on when you make the rate increases, because if you make the rate increase, let's just say next month, not suggesting you do that, but you could do it next month, and then you waited in a year to then think about a new data center, or even 2 years, which is perfectly fine. Then you will have accrued significant cash over that year, and that will make paying for it easier, whereas paying for it all at once would be much more challenging, which is why I think, implementing these at your discretion, the cash flow will change quite significantly with an ARPU increase of this amount. And then that should then make it easier to afford the rest of the recommendations.
Can I ask a question? For those of us who don't stream 2 or 3 movies at the same time, can you explain or describe why SandyNet is a superior product? I just check my email.
Yeah. Greg, do you want to do that, or do you want me to do that?
Sure, I can hit on it. Yes, 500 megabits is a pretty big pipe for being the lowest tier there. But we also see a higher demand in traffic over time each year. There's a difference in being able to download something quickly and get off the line, so to say, versus utilize an entire pipe for a longer period of time to download the same amount. So we try to provide a bigger lane for you to download, and then you can get what you need done and move on. So for those that are not necessarily heavy users, I wouldn't call it necessarily overkill. It is nice to have because of the convenience that it is pretty instantaneous. But we're starting to see now that those plans don't change over time. So we've actually increased that speed over time as well, just as a thank you, because we noticed that by increasing that pipe, it doesn't allow for constraints later on. And so we've reached the point where we've got this nice tiered setup here where I don't expect that to change. But in terms of some of the other options that make it superior, I think support is our big one, to be honest, as the local support and feel. We are obviously affordable, and then we provide more speed than necessary in a lot of cases, and that's on purpose for that same value. As we don't think that you should be restricted by a plan necessarily. At least that's how I've operated in my time here.
Thank you.
I'd like to add to that as well, that one of the instruments that will be talked about a little bit in this plan is the idea of broadband, nutritional labels, if you will, so that you can compare SandyNet to the local options that exist commercially. And I have every expectation, knowing what I know about the network, in my nearly 30 years experience in IT personally, that that nutritional label is going to look like something that came off the shelf at let's say Whole Foods, but you paid a Winco price for it. And I think that's really going to shine really brightly, once that's in the hands of subscribers, and they'll be able to make those comparisons and understand the differences a lot better.
And those labels are going industry wide, correct?
That's correct.
So that's the key.
Yeah, all of the commercial ISPs are going to be, as Sandy will be, required to produce those, and a certain level of regulated accuracy contained within.
Thank you.
Can you clarify what the wireless base and wireless mid are? Is that the phone service at your house?
That's for the outside of city limits, those that are still on the wireless system. So we offer some lower tiered packages for those that still come to some of the old water towers throughout the city. So we still have about,
Before we had fiber to the home and DSL.
it's about 350 subscribers still on that system.
Chris Mayton's been trying to get in here.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, mine's probably more of a question, it's just my curiosity goes to me. When I think about a small business evolving and growing over time, that reach a capacity limits that SandyNet has. You think about maybe selling and letting it become an MSP for somebody and sell it back to the city for servicing. Is that a consideration for cost value of Sandy Net? And what it's worth if you were to give it to a larger, group to take it over? And then we just manage it like an MSP instead of managing it ourselves? Has that been under consideration?
I know it's a topic that's been discussed in the past. It's never gained enough traction to move forward and really put together a plan. I know it's always been something that's been available, but we've never either been approached for a buyout either, or had that really assessed there. And I'll let Jeremy speak to that a little bit more.
We actually looked at something similar to that, a public-private partnership, when we first started doing fiber to the home. Before we went to do it, we looked at trying to do that, but the private companies wanted to just do it themselves and not, want to do anything, right? Partner with a cable company or others around. And so they didn't want to do that. We also had been approved a couple different times to do a public-private partnership with some outside companies. But what ended up happening is they were just looking at the bottom line of how much money they were going to make, but they weren't giving us enough time of the day because we were so small. You had just been a completely just another city in the incumbents area. And so the customer service and what has made Sandy home is a lot of different things in Sandy. And one of those things is, the great area we live in, the parks and that, but just the livability through that part of it. And so you kind of lose that aspect of that for sure. You're then paying other parts of someone in Pennsylvania for that.
That's why I said unpopular, right?
Mhm.
I just
So-
was looking at it more from a financial standpoint. Had we considered it, did it make any sense? If the answer is no, the answer is no and good. We like it better local.
So I think another side of looking at that from a financial perspective is our rates are so much lower than anybody else across the country. That in order to make that attractive for any commercial entity, your rates would have to be on par with that. So I think that's something we have to think about.
Yeah, and not to mention, there's a lot of intangible value that the community is getting from owning the ISP. Just think about the additional money that circulates in the economy because it's all staying local versus what happens if anyone outside of the jurisdiction were to be involved. That's a meaningful boost to the economy. Okay. So another smaller but meaningful recommendation or finding and recommendation from this process. We're recommending that the kind of relationship between SandyNet and the advisory board grow a little bit and bring more structure to the decision-making and governance. So obviously the advisory board, serves a consultative function for SandyNet, and we think that the operations would benefit from kind of building a little bit more structure around the relationship and the advisory board adopting more of the practices of a kind of board of directors. And so what that looks like specifically on the recommendation side is to just, review the financial, legal, engineering, and operational expertise of the advisory board, and figure out if there are any gaps in that that are important to advising SandyNet. And then we're encouraging the board and SandyNet together to develop a robust structure of how to present financial and operational reports every cycle in order to then allow for strategic discussions more in line with a corporate board of directors.
Great.
So another thing that we addressed in the plan is the concept of continued expansion. And I think as people are well aware, SandyNet is very close to achieving 100% coverage within city limits with only a few apartment buildings that are still under construction, but that threshold will be achieved very soon, which is excellent. And we do think that continued strategic expansion outside of the city is a good thing in general. One of the, this is a little bit of a trickier concept to explain, but once an ISP, we see this pattern in a lot of ISPs. Once they reach a critical threshold of about 4,000 customers, which SandyNet has just reached, adding customers brings in more revenue kind of on a linear basis, while only requiring an incremental addition of operational costs. And so essentially, scaling will benefit SandyNet from this point onward if that can be achieved reasonably and with and with an evaluation of every expansion to ensure that it will be financially advantageous. So the plan offers quite a bit of detail about considerations for how to think about growth, both through the existing partnership with CBX, Clackamas County, and possibly with SandyNet just expanding under their own power, so to speak. And again, so it's just, we're not encouraging wanton growth without thought, but measured and responsible growth will bring more resources back into the city of Sandy and strengthen SandyNet operations. Again, because SandyNet is kind of at a point where scaling, you start to see more benefits to scaling.
Okay, I'm just have a question on that point because we're going to look at another agenda topic later on where we're getting $160,000 to hook up 8 homes. And some of these homes are almost a quarter mile off the main road. And so that equals $20,000 per home. That, I don't know who's paying for that. I guess it's the county. I know it's the county. I mean, but the customers didn't pay for it. And when you consider 45 going up $12 to 57 and divide 57 by $20,000, it's 30 years for them to pay off the $20,000 hookup fee. So, and that's, before we've even gotten all the equipment out there. And so that's where, when we talk about, and I'm sure these costs are probably high. And so it's not really going to cost us that much and we'll make some profit off of it, as you alluded to in your staff report. But that is what I am concerned about when we start looking at, expanding to these areas where, somebody wants, the fiber run a quarter mile on their driveway at $20,000 and they're not paying for it. So how, I guess I'm curious about how we deal with that. I mean, where they're right off the road, sure. And we already have a line down the road. But especially if CBX isn't doing it and we're gonna take that on, I'd be concerned about what the true cost is of hooking those additional customers up.
Yeah, I agree. And then I think that's a perfect example of deployment that were you not playing with house money there and somebody else was paying for it, I would say that does not make financial sense to be looking at a 30-year payback period for any investment. So, Greg and his team knows how to do the analysis to see, what makes sense from a payback period perspective. You will have to set that threshold internally if you go down this path. But let's just say there's an area of 100 homes that would cost $10,000 a home to connect all in, right? That gets you down to a payback period of 8 years. And that you may have to decide what the appropriate threshold is in terms of what you consider responsible growth. 8 years may be too much, especially if it's outside of the city. But, if it's something that Clackamas is paying for, or as you mentioned, if it's something that's already adjacent to a line that you've already built, for example, the line up to the water treatment center, right? Connecting people along that path, that type of expansion, really there's no downside to, because your return on investment is going to be, much faster. So where you get into needing
a little pushback on that, because if you're on a septic tank in the city of Sandy and you need to, your septic tank failed and you need to connect to the sewer, even if it's out there, that's the cost to the homeowner completely. And it could be anywhere from, 28,000 to like 60, 80,000, depending on how far away the main pipe is. So we should be looking at that more, I think.
So what I think this answered for us, when we were talking about some of the questions we had about Greg came to us and especially where grants are paying for this expansion on many of these roads, right? So yes, the payback on the grants, who knows who justified that, but the money's there, they're being paid for. The question that I thought we were originally tackling was, yeah, but what about the true cost to us? Are we just growing SandyNet because, or is it actually benefit? And what I was impressed with this report is this inflection point of around 4,000. We're growing up to 4,000, you're not efficient, really. You're under efficient. As you hit 4,000-ish, all of a sudden the efficiency of the staff we have, because you have to have all these positions, whether you're serving, 2,000 or 4,000 people, you still got to have 24/7, coverage. What's interesting is this after 4,000, your cost for that extra user, not to install them, but to maintain them, keep them running, service them, goes way down. And so all of a sudden your profitability on those customers past 4,000 starts to go real attractive. And that helps us reduce the pressure on rates.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm also not recommending, I hear your analogy about the septic system, but I'm not recommending that SandyNet. So there's a term in the industry called a standard drop or a standard installation, and then a non-standard installation. And for situations where SandyNet has a protocol for what's considered a standard installation, and it's probably something along the lines of if you're within 400 feet from the fiber line going down the road, that's a standard installation. Where you get, so anything that's a standard installation next to infrastructure you already have, that's a no-brainer. I agree. Building out like down someone's mile-long driveway, that's a separate situation, and the customer typically has to pay for that in a special case. So it's all a math equation, right? What will it cost SandyNet, and what will the revenue be and the payback period be? But in general, if you're looking at the cost benefit analysis, there are ways to grow responsibly, and that will benefit SandyNet and bring revenue into the city, reduce the need to make rate hikes in the future, strengthen the operations, et cetera.
Councilor Walker, if I might just add here, I would agree. Well, I will state and say, I think at some point CBX needs to provide us a strategic plan that shows how they plan on doing this for the long-term future as well. I think they're struggling in a similar boat that we have with that. I think it'd definitely be a good discussion point to bring up with them to help get something like that in place. It would definitely make it easier for us to determine the feasibility and long-term. We are now shifting from reacting to hopefully being proactive here. And I think that plays an important piece. I think that's definitely something that's worth discussing with them at some point, whether it comes up for renewal or before any other changes happen, as we can probably get to during the other IGA discussions. The last point, we don't need to really even talk about this here, is the cost to put it in the ground the first time. It was provided via grant. Prices are sky high in a way now. They will continue to go up over time, especially with some of the other infrastructure funds that are coming down the pipe. The cost to replace is not always everything, if that makes sense. The engineering's already done. The pipe is in the ground. Pipe lasts, as far as I know, pipe lasts forever. Plastic lasts forever in the ground. So ideally, that cost should be a lot easier to replace in the future, would be my hope. And I'm hoping an analysis would show something like that, where the replacement cost over that 30-year schedule isn't coming back at $25,000 per home.
Okay.
Councilor Walker, I would also add to that, just from experience in these areas, is that having a master plan in place, so there's something tangible to bring to the table with CBX to say this is where we're strategically headed, versus talking around it, will provide an instrument that's really important for having those conversations and beginning to start to formulate some of those numbers so that you can actually have real meaningful discussions, and those numbers will have some meaning.
I think we need, on that point, we need to do a little bit more work on, like what's in the UGB, because the report mentioned the UGR, which is much bigger. So, so let's focus on the UGB, and then of those parts, and of course, we can never always, predict where a developer is going to go next, but to some extent, they're going to go, fairly, but, they're not going to go way out here because the sewer's not out there, and they're going to have to pay for the sewer to get, if they go to the edge of the UGB, they're not, it's going to be sewer costs to get out there. So we can kind of, I think, estimate what areas of our UGB have the highest density and the cheapest costs, if, you know. And I think we need to be working with CBX on all those, you know, things, because, you know, my friends that live like on the edge of Sandy, but not in the city, are just wondering who lives on Colorado and Gunderson Road that they got, you know, service on a 1/4 mile driveway.
Yeah.
So, you know, somebody, you know, it's just that transparency and optics that the report mentioned about having to have a defensible explanation of why you went where you went. So,
And my hope would be with the new infrastructure money, the BEAD money, as they're calling it, as that gets released and if Clackamas County goes for that, there's different requirements and I, you know, hope there's different ways that they go about assessing those. They typically bid on locations that are already considered underserved. So Colorado and Gunderson qualified. I can't say why that was chosen over another site specifically, and I'm hoping there's more of rationale as in this is awarded because it was bid on, but they have, you know, everyone bid on everything, so to say. So I think it's worth, you know, it'd be a good discussion to have, especially when you're looking at it saying, are you going towards an area that's already within our UGB and UGR that we plan on it also hitting at some point as well.
Yeah. I think it's key to point that to me, this plan is really financial based. It doesn't address a strategy or a council goal to build out certain areas or provide, you know, stay within the UGB or the UGR. It says nothing about that as far as I can remember, but what it does say is how to analyze the financial benefit of going wherever. Because it's not, in some, other than, you know, a service call suddenly becomes, you know, you got to drive an hour away versus 30 minutes. It's the cost to maintain, bill, all that doesn't really change whether you're.
well, if we're not installing it, true. If
Yeah.
CBX gets us out
Yeah.
there, that's fine.
Or
but-
even if the
but
install is
option is
done.
for us to do
But
it,
even if the install is done, that's that upfront cost, if it's factors in and it pencils out relative to the numbers that we have to firm up. Then it doesn't matter really, unless as a council, we decide we want to focus on specific growth in certain areas, which we could.
And then there's certain areas where you take advantage of already other bills, water bills. For instance, down Bluff Road, all the way down to Lested. You know, you're digging up a trench, throwing in the pipe is, you know, pennies in comparison. And that's just taking advantage wherever you're putting in a new pipe. If you're gonna expand a pipe on another conversation, making sure you put that in there because it's literally pennies on the dollar. So, and then you being able to expand off of that.
Great. Well, that was the last of my slides. I'll pull this down and stick around in case there's more conversation to be had. But I just want to say again, many thanks to everyone who I was able to talk through this process. Received a lot of great input from people on the council and other community members and staff. And big thanks to Greg as well for being a great partner and receptive to all the recommendations and work we did together. So it was a pleasure.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the presentation to the advisory board members for all of your guys' service and work in our community as well. So thank you, Greg. Appreciate it.
And thank you for the support from the council too. Yeah. So.
And so Mayor, we're obviously not looking to adopt this tonight, but we'll be bringing it back soon.
Great. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
All right. With that, we will move ahead in the agenda to the review of the interpretive signs for Bell Street, 362nd Avenue.
Thanks, Mayor. We have Rebecca Markham and AJ Thorne coming up this evening to do this next agenda item for the council. Some backstory here. When we started working through the Bell Street 362nd extension, there was some requirements from the State Historic Preservation Office that needed to be incorporated into that plan. This is the
Why
incorporation.
was that?
I'm sorry?
Why was
Why
that?
was that?
The
Historical
barn,
designation
yeah,
of the
the
barns.
barn,
Because
the
of the
property.
designation.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so we finally have the road installed, open for business. Now that some of these finer details towards the end of the project are needing
The
to
finer
be
part.
remedied and installed. And so we've got examples of what the interpretive signs are going to look like. But Rebecca has been integral in getting us to this point tonight. So I'll kick it over to AJ and Rebecca to talk about
Thank
where we're
you.
at and where we need to go.
Thank you.
All right, so as Tyler mentioned, this is part of our 362nd Bell roadway. I'll be honest with you guys, a little over a year ago, I was finishing up my first pure road project I had ever worked on. And it was flipped to me, don't forget, there's some interpretive signs that need to be done. I spent longer than I'd care to admit thinking that I was going to have to personally create something that looked like that. And it terrified me.
Yeah.
So fast forward a little bit, Rebecca becomes available and we're able to tackle this project properly. We reached out to 3 different entities and ended up with Sea Reach, who was the firm that designed and built the signs that are out at the Johns Ridge Viewpoint. There was a lot of digging that took place to get the information in place to put this all together. And I think they look wonderful. I hope you guys had a good chance to look at them tonight. What we're looking for from the council at this point would be over the next couple weeks, if we could get some emails, aside from any comments that come up tonight, and just some tweaks, anything that you see that could be changed before we can send this off to SHPO for final review and then start getting these things in production. I'm going to turn things over to Rebecca in a second here. She's been amazing with this project and really dug in and got all this put together, and these signs look absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So with that, I mean, they're kind of like the jewelry for the road, you know, so we want them to look, pretty much immaculate. You know, where people can walk down, eventually Bell Street will be developed and hopefully people will be shopping or whatever it will turn into be, and, walking to the school, seeing these signs. And you know, we reached out. Part of the thing with SHPO was they needed to incorporate the family, Lundins, Johns Rudd, that lived on the property, and also the land, the barn, the bungalow, and what the land was used for. So the first sign is really the bungalow, the land, the barn, and you'll see on that one right there, there's going to be a few picture swaps. The barn needs to have a better picture, something that doesn't have a shadow, look, you know, so we'll fix that. So there are going to be a few pictures that you'll see on these drafts that will be changed out. Some of them are kind of blurry. It wasn't until recently that we actually got the electronic files to the Sandy Historical Society. So Austin, who has done some other stuff with the city, is on the board over there and brought us over a hard drive just recently. So I just got that to Sea Reach and took out some really key pictures. So the third sign is going to be really just passing through some of the best of Sandy. There's a picture in there that is going to be a parked picture that they will change out. Right now, it's kind of just a miscellaneous picture, a placeholder. You know, we reached out also to Sandy, the transit, to Sam, because we wanted the trolley on there, another part of like the best of Sandy. There's the Sandy Mountain Festival, that's kind of, again, a huge part of Sandy. The Barlow Road, and really the last one is going to be, you know, Sandy, what we're surrounded by, basically the Sandy River. The logging was a huge part, the sawmills, just really a historic glance at the surrounding riches. We worked with the Lundins and actually got some photos. They actually came in negatives, so we had to really turn them into positives. So the family photo actually came from Lars Lundin in a negative. And a lot of their photos he didn't have access to. They were with his sister that was in New York who had passed. So we were kind of limited with a lot of the photos. So as much as I wanted to have access to tons of photos, and you would think with the internet, it was a little difficult, but I feel like we got some really great key pieces. And we also wanted to recognize Phil Johns Rudd, who's a really key piece to Sandy, and actually kind of coincides with the viewpoint. And so I felt like that would be a great key piece with Johns Rudd Viewpoint underneath his picture. So with this SHPO, the requirement is to have it done by 2027. Obviously, we're on track, but with Sea Reach, you know, we have a schedule that we're getting through. And we really hope to have these, you know, your guys' feedback, the council's feedback, send it to SHPO to have them review and give us their feedback. And hopefully looking to install, I would hope summer of next year. We don't know placeholders quite yet. There is some topography issues along, where they're gonna be. There's kind of a slope on one part on Bell Street and there's a fence. So we've got to kind of figure out the best possible solution. So when these go up, they'll look evenly spaced, but naturally spaced, hopefully.
So being walkable.
That's the key, yeah,
Yes,
to kind of bring people through the road.
So I guess that's kind of one of my big questions. So 4 feet by 2 feet,
Yes,
okay? And then the Bell Street section, those property owners, their fence lines are literally
Yeah.
right against the sidewalk, so.
that's
where's
gonna be the
4-foot
hard
sign gonna
part.
go?
Well, that's where we're at. We
So-
don't know quite yet.
Isn't the right of way beyond the sidewalk?
The right of way is beyond the sidewalk and we'll have to check into the ability that we have to hang one of these slightly into our hillside easement that we have as
Yeah, you
well.
have to check into what?
Whether or not we can get some encroachment into the easement that we already have on some of
Yeah,
these properties.
How far is
The,
the easement?
it depends on the
property?
the height of the hill and the property, yes.
But we're talking about the highway side of the road, right?
But, so we're gonna run them up 362nd, there'll be 2 signs, and then along Bell Street. there'll be
Right,
2 signs.
but on the highways, I mean, not on the cow field.
Oh, yes, yes,
Right.
to the south side of Bell and then to the east side of 362nd.
And they're meant for walkers.
Yes.
Where would somebody
Yeah.
park to go see these signs?
I look at it eventually as the road develops, these will, or the property develops, I could see in the future where people will be maybe
There's a lot of
shopping.
walkers along there, I mean. I can
People
attest
are
to that.
walking to Fred Meyer's now that the Bell Street has opened up all that entire.
So the closest
sub-
parking today would be Fred Meyer.
School.
From Myra, the high school.
School.
So,
School.
and
Or,
Believe it or not, there's quite a few people, especially dog walkers,
Mhm.
who are parking there at the
At the
dead
dead
end.
end.
at
I
the
was
dead
thinking
end.
that, that's not
Yeah.
official. but-
Right now,
Yeah.
and granted, that'll go away at some point, but right now, that's a popular place, or they're TNN there.
Someday there'll be a business there with a parking lot, it'll be fine.
right, that's what I kind of foresee as it gets developed, it'll be, bring more traffic, more people walking through. I think it'll catch people's attention, once that does get developed and you have these beautiful signs. And I think it'll, really, people that don't even live in Sandy will see these and kind of see,
Yeah.
what a great,
additionally, we are required to have 2 on each of the new roadways
Oh, okay.
as part of our.
On the
agreement.
new roadways that are built on the property.
Yeah,
So while we're all thinking of what's a pretty busy road or will be even more and more. I mean, the general idea is we're all kind of closing our eyes and trying to look into the future is somebody goes in to shop for the day, they're going from one store to the next, they're walking around and they're coming across these signs while they're doing their experience on the property.
exactly.
Can you make sure that however we put them in the ground is such that they can be removed for the
course.
construction?
Yep.
Without damaging them, so we don't.
Yep.
definitely.
I just, and it's probably just my lack of being able to picture it, but I see this as looking really odd, especially as it develops. To be blunt, and the reason is, it's like, if those turn into commercial areas and stuff, I see this not really being something that, a business or something might want to kind of fit into their facade,
Mhm.
right? Where like maybe like a more of a larger singular thing down 26, near the corner or something might stick out more and be more useful than a 2x4 sign along the rock. And I don't know, are we required to do
Yeah.
it in
We
this
are-
manner?
We're required and the size, I mean, it's very specific.
And I think to Counselor Hokinson's point, the fact that we will be able to move these as development happens, because as you all know, that we don't know exactly what this site is gonna look like as the years go by here. But if it turns out that there are some ideal locations. This is something that can be kind of frog hopped around the property. Not too many
Mhm.
times, of course,
Mhm.
but.
Well,
occasionally.
certainly, if any of you have strong feelings of a location along those two
Mhm.
streets, let us know, because we have
Yeah.
not pinpointed or
Please, yeah.
walked into a site yet.
I love the idea and I think it's really neat. And I'm not trying to say that. I just think these spots, especially as things develop, just aren't gonna, you know, whatever, pick your store that's gonna build or commercial, they're not gonna. It's not gonna be as important to them as it is to us. And so I just think that. I mean, if that's what we agree to and that's what we have to do, then so be it. But I just think that there would be a better way to design this that might even stick out a little more. That would give them more attention. Quite honestly. Cindy?
Do these come in conjunction with one of those like historical marker signs that you see off the highway?
That I have not worked on. That wasn't part of.
Because that could be a way
No,
to,
yeah,
that could be a way to call attention to those that are, maybe they're off the beaten path just a little bit, but you have those signs on the highway that's like historical marker this way. Also, I wanted to ask about the possibility of maybe including something like a QR code on these so that, well, in the future, when we have more historical markers, we get, you know, something in Minot Park, they can all kind of connect
Okay.
in town and make like a.
I kind of like it, and it, for all the reasons. The day people hated taking me to Blockbuster because I'd read all the back of all the movies, and I take forever in a museum, but. I mean, I love the vision of, I'd love to get them on Tickle Creek Trail. That'll probably get
Mhm.
Kathleen
No,
going,
I-
I don't
I
know. But I love the idea of trying to find opportunities of telling our city story, past, present, and future, while people are walking around. Now,
I
we can
love
all have
QR
different
code.
artistic feels or how to do that, but I mean, I would take, especially on that path on a nice day, I would take all day walking through and reading signs like this, quite honestly, and I think a lot of people would.
To the QR code, because I like that idea a
Mhm.
lot. And maybe this is out of the scope of the signs, but I know a lot of times with QR codes, there's a way to actually get more information in that QR code.
Yeah,
like More
definitely.
historical information or, you know, kind of a deeper dive. One of the things that impressed me when we were over in Prineville for the tour of their wastewater was that they had put a walk around that wastewater facility that had QR codes and signs up where school kids could go and they click on the QR code and they had classwork that they could do with that. So. you
No,
know,
I
maybe
love
it Kind of
that.
expanding along.
Absolutely love that. I didn't even
Some of
thought
it.
of that.
So I redid the interpretive signs at John's viewpoint, you guys should call
Okay.
it. And I worked with Sea Reach and all that.
Okay.
And I designed the new one that we have with so the first rule of interpretation, you guys, is interpret what you're looking at. So when you went to John's viewpoint and they were talking about the Barlow Road, you know, all this stuff, but they didn't have anything about like the view and which peak is what or anything like that. So that's why that new sign is there. So it's always important to interpret what you're looking at. And so putting that barn where you have a great view of it,
Where the barn
unfortunately,
is.
I'm gonna say there's a huge bunch of junk out
I know.
there that needs to kind of go away because that's not the best look for us.
We're definitely working
I'm
on
sure you're
that.
working on that, don't worry about it. But you know, but somewhere where you can kind of see the house and the barn and stuff. So, you know, placing and then the cow pastures and stuff, you know, just kind of putting them, you know, as close as possible to the subject matter. The QR code is a great idea.
Yeah.
But the QR codes go bad. There's all sorts of issues you want to change, you want to add to it. And so a lot of times you have to change the QR code. And so what you can do is just kind of put like a little screw on thing to the corner, you know, leave a little space in the corner or something so that you can screw it and remove
You
it
need to
when it needs to be, you know, or you can just kind of put a separate little sign to the next, which is a little hokey looking, like we have at the John's viewpoint of, you know, like we have the bar, what is it, the scenic highway sign kind of next, you know, it's a little crowded there. I think there's a couple little goofy standalone signs. I would think it'd be nice to kind of have the same structure and base and stuff. So we have this kind of a family
Yeah.
of signs, they all look alike. And then having that interpretive spot about where you can go see these other sites with the QR code would be really helpful. I think those are all great ideas, yeah.
And I think too, like with the Johns Road viewpoint, we are gonna put a marker on there too, saying
Yeah.
like whatever
Yeah.
1 whatever miles to Johns Road viewpoint, and same with the new park, you
Yeah.
know, and kind of
Yeah, and Mining
incorporate
Park.
that
I was thinking Mining Park, and that's our.
in Mining Park, yeah.
Yeah, so I had I made some
Yeah.
notes on my,
Okay.
paper copies.
And it's the nerd in me, but you're missing a generation in here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a couple of them, and some of it's, I think, our dorky city story of being resilient and the Sandy net and the Sam and the,
Right.
being the little engine that could and all that kind of stuff.
Would that be more appropriate though for like something that would be in town? Cause I
Possibly.
feel like this, and this is something that could probably grow.
Yeah, totally.
And something like in a little town square.
Yeah.
We call it.
Are we preserving the books?
He's trying to talk.
This is,
No,
we're
it's-
excited about this. But, the other question I had is the Sandy Mountain Festival photo.
Yes.
Lane.
It's, I don't know that it shows our town in its
Yeah,
best
yeah.
light.
That's
Is
been a
there-
hard one too.
Is there
Shocking.
one that is, I mean, the historic one shows, the old church in town. and
Yeah.
That's the same, do we have a photo?
There's a couple more photos. It's interesting because we reached out to a couple of the key people that ran the Mountain Festival the last few years, and we did get some photos from them. And it was kind of hard. Some of the photos weren't usable and were really based forward of just specific people. Finding historic ones, it actually started with like a strawberry festival, honestly, and it was kind of interesting. We were gonna try and incorporate that. Finding a Mountain Festival one has been very hard, like the perfect one, but I do have another one we asked them about, was in Mining Park and kind of had some vendors, and it might be more of a,
The
a better
Sandy Post
mix
has
for
a bunch
that.
too.
Huh?
If you just Google, Mountain Festival Parade, Sandy Post has a bunch.
Don't forget Winterfest.
I did look and Winterfest too. We did try to reach out to get some of the photos from the newspaper because we have to give credit and ask for that. And then we just never over like 3 different times reaching out, never got a response. So it became very, okay, we need to move on to something else and to the
Talk to you.
next thing.
We already have a thing going on with that, because we're digitizing all the Sandy posts.
Okay,
The Friends of the Sandy Library are. So we're
okay.
gonna already own that stuff.
That would be very
That'd be very helpful.
nice. Okay. If I can definitely get
tie 'em
another,
for that.
please. Thank you. Yeah, if somebody knows of some key photos or key events, please, I mean,
I like that you came to us for feedback. Is it possible to post these and get community feedback on them? Will that just open up a can of worms?
Mr. Brady, do you have any feelings on that?
I really love community feedback on the front end of trying to get everybody's ideas and stuff in there.
Yeah.
But once you start getting into anything visual, it does.
Well, yeah, it's like any other feedback in that regard. You're not gonna implement it all. But maybe somebody's got a really cool picture.
I did think about that after the fact. Like I thought, I wish if I ever did this again, I think I would want to reach out to the community and say, hey, we've got this great project. Can you send in your photos? And, I wish I would have thought about that. Yeah, in the beginning.
Okay, can I turn on 2 things? First thing, are we preserving the barn? I know I asked you that the other day. And
Yeah. So it's not our barn. Don't know what the property owners have in mind for that
Okay.
barn. I assume there's some restrictions placed on it, given that the
I-
State Historical Society.
Okay.
We don't own it, I guess.
Well, I mean, it's gonna be preserved, I guess is my question, or is it, is the possibility of a developer coming in and tearing it down a possibility? I was just.
Yeah, but I don't have the answer to that. I know you and I spoke about that late last week. I haven't figured out.
The only thing
whether or
that
not
I
it can
have
be
to make
torn
me
down
feel
or
better
not.
about it is knowing the family, they're gonna put a value on that barn.
Yeah.
In the sale of that transaction, I'll tell you that.
Okay.
And then they would have to go through a process, which is possible to remove it from the historic registry
Okay.
for it to not be, and that is doable to remove.
Okay. The second question or it's more of a statement is, I know last year, as far as the parade, I was out there and there was a drone. Do we have any drone footage that might just be a little less focused on one spot? And I don't know, if I don't even know if there's anything good out of there, but.
Did JoJo do that? Did JoJo shoot it?
We don't.
I'm not sure.
We don't know where the drone was
Shot it,
from
yeah.
or where.
Parade goer.
You might, yeah.
Well, the other thing is on your
we can look into
existing
that.
Sandy Mountain Festival picture, the
No,
old
I'm
one,
sorry.
if you can kind of figure out where that's from. Another cool thing on interpretive signs is, here's before and after kind of.
Yeah, I like the before and
If you
after.
know where that is, I see the steeple in the background, but ask, kind of taking a picture from that part of, because a lot of people
Okay.
sit in the same place.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
if you say, hey,
I
do
like
you have a
that.
picture, from the mountain festival looking, from this point looking that way or whatever it is, I can't quite tell it.
And then Sandy here, 2024 versus,
Yeah,
yeah.
just kind of having that before and after.
Okay, no, that's a really good
Picture
idea.
Is that how we can involve the community? Is.
Well,
by throwing
asking
out
for a
there,
picture, I
hey,
wouldn't
this is
necessarily
something.
send out all this because what you're gonna get is that, everybody's, this is what happened when I was naming trails up at government camp. Man, everybody and their brother wanted, their relative was a significant,
Yeah.
whatever, the postmaster, and they wanted trails named after their relative and all that, so
Sure.
you might want to
Yeah,
consider.
but I
Yes.
mean, some of these photos you've gotten, because I know you mentioned the post, but the Historical Society, right? Some of these
Yeah.
photos.
Yeah,
Because like a lot of these families, the Proctors, and they're all still here.
Yeah.
And they may have, some family photos, and that may be opening a bag, but,
yeah.
They may have some historical photos.
Yeah, I agree.
Of
There
some
is
areas.
quite a bit of updated stuff we did get from the Historical Society. The one key thing was to really focus the family piece of it on Johns Rudd and Lundin's.
Sure.
But I do
Sure.
agree, getting
Sure.
some older photos from a family that's been around.
Well, and my only, a lot of those families intermarried.
Yeah.
And so they're all,
Yeah.
they're all tied together anyway.
Johns Rudd,
Yep, they're all
Lundin's,
tied
yeah.
Together anyway,
I've
so,
noticed that.
Are we in trouble
Okay.
for using the word founding families when we're not talking about the other families that founded Sandy?
That I don't know. I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, that's
Well,
kind
pretty
of.
much
It might-
every,
it
pretty
might
much every
cause-
street name going through town is named after a family.
Right,
so-
right. So if we use founding families,
Yeah.
it feels.
Okay,
Different.
like we're
Yes,
just
no, you're-
singling them and,
You could also put
Okay.
among the, or there's
Mhm.
different ways of
Ways to say it.
incorporating that they were a founding family without it being
Single.
so
singling
singled
them.
out.
Okay, let me definitely address that with Sea Reach to come up with making it founding families, like you said, among the founding families. That does sound a lot.
And I know the Mount
better.
Hood Cultural Museum, there in Government Camp, they have a
Yeah.
lot of historic Barlow Road and logging photos.
Okay.
Probably, they've been around longer than,
Wait,
our
what,
museum.
what was that again?
Mount
What was-
Hood Museum and Cultural Center in Government Camp.
Okay,
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really
Thank-
appreciate it.
no, thank you guys. If you have any feedback after you've thought about it, let me know if you guys want copies, let me know. I'm more than happy to do that. And then we are waiting on a third draft with the updated photos that we did kind of change out with some of these others that I think will feel even more, of an impact.
It's fun doing this. these
Yeah.
projects,
Yeah,
isn't
it's
it?
exciting.
Get into the
It's
history.
positive.
AJ, so where should the council send? Do you want me to gather the comments and feed it to you?
Send them my way, that's perfectly fine, yeah.
Be careful what you ask for. You might want to
Right.
get
Just-
stuff.
Yeah, same email. No.
Yep.
Thank
Thank
you
you all very much.
all. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Feels like we need a history and arts committee.
No.
Something.
And that will as well. Or to engage more with the Historical Society and, right, but yeah,
It
absolutely.
does, it does, especially I feel like I can see this, when we talk about expanding this throughout the city and things, that would take some focus and,
I actually like the idea of combining those two.
well, I think it makes sense.
Uh-huh.
Well, and I'd add to that, thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Preserving our historic sites.
And our, yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thank you, everybody, for that. New business, still on that, IGA approval, on-call construction and Sandy Net CVX for Colorado and Gunderson Road, this fiber project.
Well, while Greg makes his way back up here, you already got kind of a preview on this agenda item during the master plan discussion. But Clackamas County or Clackamas Broadband Exchange approached Greg with an opportunity to construct some site drops for Sandy Net service. If our construction schedule allows, in order to do that, we need to formalize the agreement with an IGA. I think most notably in this staff report, and Greg, you'll probably touch on this, but Clackamas County has some ARPA dollars that they need to obligate and spend by a certain date, and so they're kind of in a bind as far as getting a contractor on board to actually do this work. We occasionally have some gaps in our construction schedule that would lend itself to construct this network or construct the build out. And then generate some additional revenue for Sandy Net, but I'll let Greg jump into the particulars.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. The staff report tried to lay out the entire history and some of the key considerations here. Clackamas County and Sandy Net already have an IGA in place historically for being an ISP for those two roads, Colorado and Gunderson, that was in place. And this one is not an addendum. It's just kind of an additional one-time deal to try to do some construction work for CBX. They're coming up on the ARPA deadline to allocate their dollars. And the route that went for procurement, they went through the route of on-call contracts. Their price per foot came back very high on a lot of those, or higher, I think, than it was anticipated. And the result was, before hitting those contracts, only a handful of drops got completed. This has led to pretty significant delays in some of the delivery of getting some of the remaining homes, especially the really long ones, getting hooked up on that project out there. So to date, of the requests that we currently have, there are 15 outstanding orders that need drop construction to be completed. CBX reached out to us and asked for us to bid in an on-call manner through an IGA for 8 of those. And so they went out, walked them, provided us all the details for them. We came back and put together a price per foot. They wanted to get it lower, and I said, well, you got to give us control of using your equipment to complete some of this construction, if that's going to be the case, so that we're not having wear and tear on our equipment. And they agreed to do that so we could get the price per foot down a little bit lower. The end result is 8 drill shots for just a hair under $160,000. That was my kind of my recap just off the cuff here, but the differences between this IGA and one of the other ones is CBX has remained the fiber owner. We would be operating as an independent contractor to just complete this work as a one-time deal. I do want to make sure I say this with some sensitivity as well, but I think I wrote it best in the staff report here. While CBX is the fiber owner and operator, there have been poor experiences that were perceived from slow construction that have been difficult for Sandy Net to separate between the city and county. It's been hard to communicate that with those that have requested service. Staff has struggled to explain the delays on behalf of the county, and this issue has lessened over the past 4 months as several other providers have finished their drill shots and gotten through their backlog. But there are still 15 left, and some of them have been on the schedule for 1-2 years now. And they are still wondering when they're going to get their fiber installed. And so staff believes that we can help manage this expectation in this situation by providing a little bit better experience getting out there and getting it completed. If we were to not do this, those dollars would expire. So we would not be able to receive any revenue, but it would fall on CBX likely to, in an unfunded manner, complete it at their own time. And my expectation is that were to happen, we'd be looking at 6 months to a year for them to complete these ones in-house. Whereas I think we have the opportunity to come in and get done in a much quicker time frame. Notably, we've already talked about the equipment piece. One of the big pieces is we have the right to reject any and all work. This is something special I put in there that I said, if it's not in our interest for any job whatsoever, we have the right to refuse it. Obviously, that means less money that comes back to us, but we don't want to be operating in a business that's not going to help us. So with consideration to the ARPA deadline for ARPA allocation, it does provide what we believe at this time to be a 2-to-1 profit or expense ratio. I use profit in the public sense of saying revenue and minus our costs. So this would be the excess. And with a lot of the other radio replacements and upgrades that we've been doing to our network, we could certainly use any additional funds possible within our budget here for that. And it's very low risk to the city as it's defined underneath the IGA, use of sharing the equipment. So no additional wear tear, it's simply labor. All the materials are provided by Clackamas County. And we would be most likely the ISP for these sites additionally. So then we now get to turn around and collect monthly revenue after CVX has paid us to complete the work there. We expect it to be just a hair under a mile of drilling and expect it to take 276 hours or roughly about 2 months nonstop. There will be time in between that we will pull crew aside, likely to work on some other stuff, but we'll definitely get it done as quickly as we can, given the weather and some openings in our schedules, as a lot of the other developments in town already have fiber and we're just waiting for houses to come online. And so as we're continuing to replace equipment in homes and work on that schedule, the 2.5 FTE that would be required for this, we found is available to start as early as January. And so with that, staff believes that the project is financially feasible. That's in line with our goals and agreements that currently are in place here. And staff is seeking council approval to move into that IGA and complete some of that work.
Wonderful. Thank you, Greg.
Mayor,
Yes,
I mean, with the 50% ROI and zero risk, I'm ready to make motions.
go for it. That'd be great.
I move to authorize the city manager to execute an intergovernmental agreement with Clackamas County to provide an on-call construction services for the Colorado and Gunderson Road project as provided in the meeting packet.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Mayton and a second by Counselor Smallwood. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays. Motion carries. Awesome. One thing I would say about CBX is I'd give them 6 to 9 months. Let the new commission kind of get in there and get installed, let them get through their goal setting. I think that department's just gonna see a lot more like leadership and attention and excitement from the board that's received over the next couple of years. So I just kind of keep an eye on it if I were you. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, contract approval for City of Sandy door access system.
Me again.
This is
Yeah, I'll jump in.
now or are we putting that IT director hat on?
Yes, yeah, so take off my Sandy.
We're all
hat,
gonna
put on
order,
my-
yeah, so we can like sit around depending on which role we're operating under.
So I am here today with a kind of a proposal to build out a door access system for the remaining buildings of the city of Sandy that don't already have swipe card access or secured facilities. This has been something that's been a topic internally among staff. I had doors that I want covered as well. It seems to be something that staff is kind of needing at this point here with some other security concerns and being able to restrict access or time restrict access, as well as shared space agreements has been another big issue. And the city of Sandy, as it's continued growing, I've seen this trend of bringing a lot of things in-house underneath specific departments to rather than other departments operating independently. And building security, we now kind of have facilities department. Building security is one of those ones that hasn't really been touched and has been left to individuals to create keys, hand them out, manage them. Whereas some facilities, such as like the police department, have swipe card access where they can restrict and manage those. What we see in larger organizations is a system that allows cards to be added, managed centrally by a single system, and then grant access to individuals based on a need or a time or any other kind of specific condition or restriction. And the city is proposing and wanting to move in that direction. Staff believes it would be definitely beneficial for numerous reasons, a lot of them that I kind of already have mentioned. And went out and put out an RFP to solicit bids to see what it would cost to come back and build out the remaining buildings with the city of Sandy, bring it underneath the single system and upgrade everything. The result was we did get 6 bids total. We interviewed 3, and of the top 3, we selected Paladin Technologies for a total cost of $135,108.07. To come in and upgrade the police department, replace the operations center door access system, a few that were there, build one out at City Hall, upgrade the one at the library, and we did end up not selecting the community center at this time because it was there was a single exterior door, and we said with this new system we could slate it to add additional doors in the future. And so to make the project feasible, kind of being in the situation that we're at in the time frame, we felt that was necessary. And From that, Tyler has some sections in here he added about the financial impact is that there is money set aside for city hall improvements from the urban renewal agency budget, as well as others from the facility maintenance internal fund, which can cover those costs there for this one-time project. And so with that, I did attach the RFP plan as well. This one is not the full entire plan. I didn't want to give away some of the boring information on there, but it does have the cost and the breakdown and the bill of materials as it stands for that for your review. But staff is respectfully requesting that City Council authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Paladin Technologies to install and build out a citywide door access control system.
If I can add one thing briefly, Councilor Hopinson, I know when I first brought this up, you had mentioned that your church was moving towards a phone-based thing. But we did find out throughout this process that our current security system does allow for a mobile app, so we're going to explore options to further streamline access and security for the building with the existing infrastructure we already have. But just wanted to throw that out there for your information.
That was fine.
Yeah, one feature that this system does is we run what's called a DMP system. It's one of the vendors for most of the alarm panels at the city and the various buildings, and this system integrates with it to be able to pull in alarms as well as control, so you can swipe arm and disarm so that you don't have to use codes anymore. And so there is a level of integration that is possible with that. In addition to DMP does offer that phone-based system for alarms as well that we have had but haven't taken advantage of up until now.
Two quick questions. Will it be card access or bracelet?
Card access
Card
is
access.
mainly for ID cards so that everyone in the city of Sandy has an ID card that is their identity.
Okay, and then second, explain to me again why we're not including the community center.
Because we looked at the cost, a lot of the cost is to get the initial infrastructure in place, a controller and then a breakout board and then retrofit a door. And the community center only had a single door that was eligible and
Just the front doors.
and every time I've been down there, it's been propped open
Correct.
already. And so I didn't know if there was enough to be gained through it at this time. I think it's something worth looking at, but I also think that potentially that something needs to change on the door frame itself.
Sure.
Make some other changes.
Yeah.
Unless there's any
Thank
more.
Yes, so where is the access control managed? Is it centrally or is it? on
It
the
would
card?
be-
So can you disable a card?
Yes, yes. Yeah, so it would be housed centrally in the data center and pushed out to the card readers to be able to handle them. And then so if someone were to depart from employment or for any
If
other
it's
reason
lost
lost
or
their key
stolen,
card,
you can cancel
you
it
could
right away.
revoke it instantly. As
Okay.
well as you could also alarm or have it notify you when a key card is attempted.
If there's no more discussion, can I make the motion?
Yeah, apologies, we don't have the
That's
suggested.
fine, I'm
language in
gonna
this
wing
one.
it here. I make a motion that
Wait,
authorize-
wait, sorry, I do have another question.
Okay.
This is important to the
Okay.
motion. The staff report lists that there's money in the urban renewal budget. But we're authorizing city budget, so how is that reconciled?
Yeah, so you may recall several months ago,
I
we
know I have.
finally, after 20 years of an urban renewal agency, did an IG between the city of Sandy and the urban renewal agency for situations exactly like this, where you're authorizing the city manager to execute a contract. We have an IGA between those two entities now to exchange services and be managed sort of under one umbrella in a formal way instead of two separate motions.
And my question is, it says 135,000. I'm just wondering, do you need 140 to, because you got 2,000 in support contract maintenance stuff? Do you need?
That would be an annual maintenance.
Right.
That'll be annual.
Yeah, we plan on building that into the budgets going forward here, so it's all covered.
If you need an extra that came in.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to do a not to exceed amount, you could certainly do that. with a little
140
cushion.
good?
Would be great.
So I'll make a motion that we authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Paladin Technologies to install and build out a citywide door access control system at a cost not to exceed $140,000.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Sheldon.
So do I need to add the, I'm sorry, do I need to add the maintenance piece in there?
Okay, thank you. Second by Counselor Smallwood. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
All right.
I have one
Yeah.
other item to
Okay.
talk about. And I meant to, I was trying to do it when you
Oh, we're doing that.
asked about, yeah. So, our housing production strategy contract is with Eco Northwest. And because of some of the issues that we've had, we're looking at possibly finding some other contractors to do our housing production strategy. Part of the process is we have to ask DLCD to terminate their HPS contract with Eco Northwest, and either procedure, procure an alternative consultant or complete the HPS in-house. So, I just, I know I've talked to a couple of you on, different instances, but, I felt like we would have a better product if we were working with consultants that we had more cooperation with. So,
I think this should probably be a future agenda item, because I think this is a more robust conversation than just.
Is there a timeline on a decision with Eco Northwest or a report that they're working on that's looming?
We're on pause right now. The time urgency is just that we have to have this done at the end of this next calendar year, and it's a pretty big undertaking. So we're just trying to
So you gotta get,
some council direction on this as soon as we can.
You can't wait for the next, yeah.
Okay.
You gotta get-
I mean, we'll make
No,
whatever the
that's
council
good.
wants to do
Yeah.
work. That's the urgency.
Well, so,
Because I've got quite a few questions, so.
let me ask you, are your questions more of where you go after
Yes.
or, yeah? Because just from being around,
Yeah.
it feels like there's a lot of consensus that we don't necessarily love where we are,
Right.
right? So not really understanding all the steps, look at me getting to do this one last time. Not understanding all the steps between now and then. Is there a portion of this, like just a notifying, hey, we know it's not you? Kind of a thing that we can do and then get to that next step of who it is?
So we're really just asking for, if this is what the council desires, we're just asking for kind of direction to staff to go forward and try to find an alternative contractor to then bring back to you, excuse me.
And present.
Because this is also funded via grant, right? So what happens to that grant? Because most of the time, there's some pretty significant stipulations.
Yeah, Kelly has been working closely with DLCD on this, and they have been willing to let us retain those grant funds. And that's my expectation for how this is gonna play out. So I don't know that would be the case if we have to do it in-house. But if we are going to one of the other contractors that works on these around the state, we would still be able to use the grant funds.
I looked it up just in the short time you told us about it. There's quite a few other contractors in the state
Okay.
that the state uses, and there's two bigger than Eco. I agree, Mayor, I'm all for a change. What I'd be most concerned with, though, as Lori mentioned, is our step forward, because I'm not worried about getting another contractor. How fast can we ramp them up to get them encompassed to give you the report you need by the time you need it?
So we'd like to move as fast as possible, absolutely.
Do we incur any rework of the change? Will we end up paying more?
I mean, so I don't have concrete numbers on that for you. I think there will be a little bit, but I hope to retain a lot of the original stakeholder engagement and that kind of work that's already been done. I can't guarantee that for you right now, but that's my expectation, is that we'll be able to use a lot of that preliminary work.
But it's certainly dependent upon whoever the new consultant is, right? They may
Because we
not
own
have any
the output
interest.
of everything but paid eco, right? That's
So
how
the-
we own it, right?
Right.
So the direction you just need is, you need direction to go
So-
try and find somebody else.
This was a bit complicated because it also included a separate agreement between the state and Eco Northwest. So what we needed from you at an official meeting like this is you're directing staff, yes, please do this, and please tell the state we would like you to.
I see a lot of nods. Do we need to take a vote or something for that to occur? I think you're getting.
It appears we have consensus, so.
Okay, everyone, yeah, just for that step at least, okay.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Yeah. thank
you'll
you.
come back with possible,
Yes.
Cool. All right, report from the city manager.
All right, a couple calendar things and then a couple fun things. Jeff and I had sent out an email, gosh, 2 weeks ago maybe, for goal setting dates. got responses from, I think, 5 individuals.
I didn't have to.
Yeah. Fair point.
It's on my to-do list. I just
Okay.
haven't gotten there, so I'll do it tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, you might do.
Yeah, so I guess just quickly, there's, of the 5 that responded, 4 said yes on one day. There's no consensus yet currently. I imagine there may not be consensus depending on how the two of you respond to that, so.
What day was
Saturday,
it?
that was January 11th. Which is one person responded no to,
I could do that.
so that's
I
the
could
best
do
day
that.
that we're at now.
Was that me that responded no?
No, it was Counselor-elect.
Oh.
So, we can certainly look at some other dates in early February, but it might be easier to not lose a week or 2 of time trying to find that if everyone could pull out a calendar and give kind of a tentative yes or no at another date.
I can do the 11th. Is that the only date you want?
6 yeses for the 11th.
For that date.
Well, historically, we've had everyone in attendance. This would mean, at the first time in my knowledge that we wouldn't have a council member there.
Christine? Are you not available on January 11th?
I'm supposed to be traveling out of town.
Okay.
But let me see what I can do.
Okay. What were the other dates look like?
Yeah, so the other dates were Saturdays in January, but outside of what was already on the survey response, we could certainly look at any of the Saturdays in February.
Like February 1st?
First, I
Yeah.
think would be an option.
It could also be February 1st.
How about you, Chris?
I am gone the 18th through the 29th, but I am back on the 30th, so first would work.
Okay.
Anyone else
First
good
you
with
do?
the
Everybody
first?
I think we have it.
Christina, you think you could do the 1st?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
here on the first.
All right.
Okay,
Sorry.
so we're gonna lock in February 1st then.
Sometimes. it's
I'll throw
easier
back.
for
That's the next day. I think.
First win.
Thank you for that. Next up, so City Day at the Capitol is January 28th. We currently have Mayor-elect Walker, Jeff and myself scheduled to go to that,
And Nelly.
and Nelly.
what?
I'm sorry,
What is it?
City Day at the Capitol.
Oh, cool.
Is there any interest from any other council members that would like to participate in that event? If so, we can certainly get you scheduled.
Let us know what you need. And
Okay,
some of us will try to make it something.
you're good?
Yeah.
Okay,
When is that?
I mean, January 28th.
So what we, oh, go ahead.
Okay,
Well, so Nelly is busy trying to book meetings with legislators
On that day?
on that day. I defer to people who've done this a lot, the mayor and I don't know. Is it effective to walk in the room with more counselors, or is there a point at which it's too many, or I don't know, is there strategy to that? I just remember some of those offices being kind of crowded.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
What you want to be able to convey, though, especially when it's a major financial ask,
Right.
is that our council's fully behind it, right? And not to like put Kathleen on the spot, but when the last time we did it, she and I were fresh off of a campaign against each other, right? And so you may remember it was like, hey, we're on the same board on this, we got to go and do that. So like, it's just that opportunity to just really be able to express that dynamic that this is important, and it's so important that even if there's little items that happen in our city where we disagree, we have all collectively said, this is what we need as a city, right? So
Yeah.
however you can demonstrate that, I think is what is important.
I
So,
defer to mayor-elect to pick who should go for whatever topics you ultimately get meetings with, To me, that's what makes sense, whatever maximizes
All right. I'll talk with
our
you
front.
and
of that.
Nelly,
Okay.
we'll coordinate. and book
see
them.
what they think, yeah.
I think last time we ended up with, 4 or 5 different meetings on that day.
Chris, were you there?
A couple of years ago, I went.
I also think, remember, they take meetings. What's nice
Yeah.
about the day is they've blocked, a lot of these guys have blocked time for you, right? But you know, Nellie's been very successful in getting different appointments and just because this is LSD City Day doesn't mean this can't, there can't be a future Sandy City Day, you know?
I had a lot of past relationships though from my previous job when I went the last time. So I don't know much of it now, so.
Well, the changeover is pretty nice, actually. So, cool.
All right, happy to report that the audit for last fiscal year, 2024 is completed finally. You guys should have received an email earlier today with sort of the closing letter. So I'm happy to put that document on a shelf and let Tyler Wallace take over for the next go around. Also happy to report that the city was awarded a grant through Clackamas County Tourism to fund the construction of the Johns Road Viewpoint camera, something that we've had on our list for 20 years at this point, probably. Long time coming. So more to come on actual dates of construction with that. We just got the award letter last week. And it's definitely a special shout out to John Wallace for his work on getting that application turned in, and Rochelle and the rest of her team for making this sort of almost come to fruition, right? Where we've actually got some momentum behind it now. So very excited about that. And then lastly, just wanted to say thank you, Mayor Pulliam, to you. It's been a pleasure to work with you over the 6 years that you've been mayor, of course, over the last year and a half or so that I've been city manager. I just wanted to pull up some of the council goals from your first goal setting really quick, just to talk about how far we've come over those 6 years.
Like a report card.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I was looking at it today and it's like,
Yeah,
holy cow. So first goal was just a general transportation goal, but specifically talking about completing the TSP, which we've done, completing the extension of 362nd and Bell that we've done, complete the jurisdictional transfer of Highway 211, which we've done, a whole section on city finances, sustainably managed city finances. I think we've, made leaps and bounds from where we've been to where we are now as far as planning ahead and having solid financial plans for the projects that we're doing. Having conversations like you did tonight with the Sandy Net Master Plan and really thinking about the medium and long term and not just what's in front of us for the next 2-year period. Community campus, make a decision on the future of the community campus. We've got a park there now. There's some derelict buildings that are not there. That whole site looks very different than it did before. Communications, redesign the city website, improve social media strategy, develop a Sandy newsletter, and then electronically publicize proposed developments and annexations. That's a part of the newsletter. So we've made lots of progress there. Comprehensive plan, we've got that taken care of. Wastewater facility plan. Hopefully we would have been a little bit further along than that, but
we generally
made a
know.
lot of
I'm
progress.
giving myself, we generally know.
And then some other, economic development and sustainability options. But when I was reviewing that earlier today, it was really just kind of eye-opening to see how much work we've really accomplished. And sometimes it doesn't feel like we accomplished enough, right? Because they're big projects and they take lots of meetings and lots of staff time. But looking back a couple of years just to see where we were and where we are now was exciting for me to look at it. And I'm sure it's a proud moment for you to see what you've made possible during your time here. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, done.
Rebuttal.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
no, Mayor.
I'm sorry.
One
Thanks,
more.
Jeff. So one more thing. In typical Sandy fashion, right?
Got
A little something for you.
Thank you.
I put it behind me and then I can see it.
Wait.
We've got a card and then of course the classic photo of the mountain. Hopefully you see that hanging in your house. You can remember your time here.
Absolutely.
Think of all of us and then think of all the fun.
Wait,
You gotta restage it.
Stage one for the post.
Awkwardly standing in front of the bags. 1, 2, 3. There you go.
Awesome. Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Don.
First, I saw there was a report that maybe some vandalism happened at the Winterfest, the gingerbread area. Any reports on this?
I had not heard about that. Chief, do you have any update on any vandalism that you can share?
The one thing I'm aware of was there was vandalism to our gingerbread house.
Your PD specific gingerbread house?
That's one I'm aware of.
That was by Parks and Rec.
I think there were some lights out also, but I think that was. Obviously, I think we remedied that, but I don't think we have any suspects.
Okay, other than Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Once again, that showed up on social media, and it seemed to be taking on a life of its own, so based on what I just heard, it sounded a lot smaller than what was being respread. Mayor, retired,
That's
soon to be. Thanks, man. You and I started this adventure at odds with each other more often than not. And as I look back, it's amazing how much I've learned from you. And I've also come to realize what most people who never get a chance to be up here is how much you sacrifice in terms of your family, your time, and things that will never be understood, whether you agree with you or don't politically. That sacrifice exists and it's pronounced, and I am very grateful for that. I'm grateful for what I've learned from you for leadership. So thank you very much and best wishes.
Thank you.
And enjoy that family time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I would also like to say thank you on behalf of people that haven't had an opportunity to see, the day-to-day, what you've done, and it's enormous. And thank you for the sacrifice and the time and the effort and the energy that you put into this community. We're super lucky.
Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to quickly recognize that, this might be a counselor's smaller thing to do instead, but just to recognize the new Parks Board. Would that be okay?
Go for it.
Okay. That seat number 1 is Michael Archer, seat number 2, Ryan Altman, and seat number 3, Clarissa Flores, have been appointed to the Parks and Rec Board. And there were lots of great candidates, and hopefully that anybody that wants to serve in this community, we can find a spot for you.
Great. Thank you.
We had a library board meeting and they are doing a survey. I think we're still working on the survey questions. But the survey will try to kind of determine what the community would like to see in the library. So stay tuned for some progress on that. And then as the mayor-elect, I'd just like to ask everybody to start thinking about what you'd like to see, goals for the goal setting session, and just kind of thinking through each of the departments, what you have an idea of what they've been working on, but we've gotten so much done, it's time to kind of start a new list. So I really would love to kind of hear what you're thinking that way. And then I will send out a note about what committees you all would like to be in, and kind of get that rolling. And then finally, just the transition that we've all made, but especially Stan and I feel very grateful for kind of getting past the rancor of elections and being able to kind of work together and find that common ground, because I think we were both surprised to see how much common ground there was, and just where we could kind of agree to kind of make progress. And I've learned, as like Don said, a lot about you. I can't probably facilitate the meeting quite as professional as you. I will try, but I really appreciate learning everything I've learned about being mayor from you. And I also look forward to your introductions to other mayors so that I can kind of learn more, because it's all about learning new things and making Sandy better. So thank you for what you've done to make Sandy better, and I hope that continues. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Rich. Yeah, we get the sappy stuff out of the way. It's been really great to sit up here and get to know you over the last 4 years. I know we've interacted with our kids and stuff growing up, but to actually kind of sit up here and even debate with you at times and then align with you at times has been a really great experience. So thank you for that.
Appreciate that.
And the one thing I think, it's really obvious when you see it, and you saw it even tonight out of the park bench, is you love Sandy, right? And you value this community, and at times you take a beating for that on social media as everybody else. But I truly think that, you know, again, whether we agree or disagree on a policy, I think you always believe that you're doing what's best for Sandy. So thank you for that over the last 6 years.
Thank you, Rich.
Also, on that note, I want to thank you guys, the Sandy Net Advisory Board, for coming tonight. You know, getting to sit in on those interviews. I'm one of those people that maybe just opens my email, my kids stream movies and all of that, and probably have to be convinced to have the internet. But it's very eye-opening when I get to sit on those boards, the breadth of experience that you collectively bring. And I thank you for coming to represent your hard work, and Greg also for showing up. So thank you for all that tonight. That's really all I have tonight. So thank you.
Great.
Yeah. All right. Best of luck. Good luck to you
Appreciate
on your
it.
next adventure and spend time with your family. I'm sure they're very excited for that. So,
Yeah.
and other than that, I have no report.
I don't have much of one either, except for you, Stan. I feel like I'm only in this chair because of you. And I don't think anybody on the council knew who I was except for you when I was on planning commission for 4 years, 4.5 years. And then my wife passed away and you called me and said, hey, you look like you need something to do. We would like for you to run for city council. And I said, you're crazy. And I ran and I won, and I've been on it for 2 years. So I'm only here because of you. And I appreciate your steadfast leadership. From what I've learned from you over the last couple of years and the way you've led the city. I also enjoyed watching your run for governor. And learned some things to do and not to do at the same time. But I did enjoy it, and I do appreciate a person who's vocal and not afraid to go against the grain. And that you are, my friend. And I appreciate it, and I wish you the best of luck with you and your family going forward.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And that was I think I told you you're the first appointment on the planning, and super proud of that. Jeremy was sitting there. It was our first kind of meeting up in the back room and doing the committee for that. No, I mean, I really love Sandy a lot. It's been said that, you know, the whole Keep Sandy Wonderful thing is kind of silly. It came from, like, I'm a Christmas movie guy. It's a Wonderful Life. And, you know, at the end of that movie, it's about the people and the people you interact with, and really, you know, community's there for one another, in your best times and in your darkest times. And that certainly, as someone who's grown up here, that's been the case for me. My parting kind of words really is just, I loved all the counselors that I worked with a lot, and I learned a lot from all of them. Losing John Hamlin really hurt, and then losing Jeremy really hurt a lot, and losing Carl, you talk about almost like it's a life, but that almost became like didn't want to do it anymore. The past mayors who have sat here and the counselors, it's a very special city, and I've talked a lot about the little engine that could, or when resilience presents itself, the city always kind of just fights through and makes it happen. And that really is kind of special fabric and heartbeat of this city. And I know I'm just so excited. I'm excited about the new energy coming in. Cities need term limits and energy and all those kinds of things, because it's a lot. The social media is a lot, the work's a lot, the different things that we got to do is a lot. But I am proud of what we've accomplished. I'm really proud of the last 6 years. I feel like someone who's worked in politics for a long time, I got dissatisfied when I would see people say that they would do a lot of things and then they not have the temperament or the backbone or whatever to go and do it. I feel like a lot of the reason it's been a little difficult over the last 6 years is we took on the issues. We walked in, took on the wastewater issues and the water issues, and COVID hit. We took on the COVID hit. We took the swimming pool issue head on. But the city, we took on the major issues facing the city, and we continually did that. And I hope we continue to. I know we will. I know all of you. You guys are awesome, and you're great leaders in this community. Sandy's super fortunate to have all of you. Look forward to seeing the new counselors coming on. You're gonna have great leadership. You have wonderful staff. One of the things I'm most proud of is we did that, Jeremy, we did the compensation study, Lori, we all did that big compensation study. And past councils had done compensation studies, but they didn't implement it. And we implemented it. And you think about what the staff, and we've always had really good staff. I don't mean to come back down, but especially at the department head level, the quality and professionalism of the staff that we've been able to recruit and bring in here has just been top notch. And I think a lot of the things that we talk about and do happen, and they happen the way they do and the top notch way that they happen, all because of those folks. So thank you. And it's my last meeting. It's supposed to be an easy one, and we're here after 9 o'clock. There's a lot of those. You guys are going to have a lot of those. Thank you for your service. Thank you for the time you take away from your family and friends to do this, but we're all grateful for it. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody.